Hi everyone! In this video we want to share our view about why economics is a great subject to study.
It is a great subject to study. If you're looking at entering university now, or as someone who's a bit older and is just keen to expand your horizons, then I hope the perspectives in this video might motivate you to consider reading some economics. If you went to a university study day, you would be told that studying economics leads to lots of job offers, involves well-paid jobs, and leads you to ask exciting questions. Now, this is all true, but I personally find that as motivating as being told the details of someone's shopping list. Economics is something that unavoidably influences our lives. That's yours as well as ours. And our interactions with other people. It offers a perspective that can enrich the lives of anyone who daydreams about the nature of the human condition. And most importantly, it provides you a set of tools that you can use to appropriately wind up sanctimonious crisis-obsessed Twitter users.
The first thing that should motivate us all to study economics is that economic phenomena are all around us and they are damned interesting. We can think about economic phenomena in terms of all the different questions we have about the society around us. Questions about the things we buy and sell, our chance to save and borrow money, the way different groups of businesses, workers, and customers organize themselves, all the way up to the different policies that political parties say they will stand for. If you have ever wondered why products are a certain price, why different types of jobs pay very different wages, how gender and wage discrimination show up in hiring and promotion practices, or why something like a carbon tax may help out with climate change, then economics is the subject that helps you understand those questions. As a result, if you care about those questions, want a way to analyze them, and you want to think about how different policies may change outcomes, economics is the subject for you.
It's easy to sit here and act as if the wealth of opportunities in front of us appeared from the ether. Or even worse, it is common to believe our opportunities are historically low. But in truth, the long process of economic growth has made the lives of many people, especially those in the Western world, significantly more comfortable than they were for our grandparents and great-grandparents. As we are all privileged to be at this current point in time, contrary to the narcissistic attention-seeking of many on Twitter and some in broader society, there is a question of whether these gains have been fairly shared. Wanting the worst off in society to have a little bit more is not inconsistent with recognizing that the material standard available to those who are worse off is better than what was available to many in the past who are on average or even high means. Understanding economic phenomena allows us to join in on a conversation about what is fair in a way where we can clearly articulate our values. And it allows us to understand why different political parties view the world the way they do. Reality is complicated, and studying economics to help make some sense of this complication gives us a greater understanding of the world, and allows us to engage in the democratic process in a more constructive and beautiful way.
Beyond questions of democracy, fairness, and moral obligation, let's be honest, it is also a lot of fun thinking through economic puzzles. What are the reasons why a factory located in a certain place, the price of Nurofen rose, or individuals appearing unwilling to manually pick blueberries in the post-COVID economy? There can be joy in just asking these questions, irrespective of the discussion. I understand why you may feel that economics is just common sense, but few things could be further from the truth. The term economics is derived from a Greek word meaning household management. In that way, many of the early views of economics treated matters of the state in a similar way to matters of a household. However, two things became clear as economic science developed. First, Even considerations of the households were often counterintuitive. The idea of comparative advantage can be hard to grasp, for example. Secondly, the complex relationship between individuals, how people's actions respond to the actions of others, and the additional ways a nation functions as a closed system imply that the logic of households can be misleading when looking at entire cities or countries. Lionel Robbins gave the common definition of economics, which is: economics is the science which studies human behavior as a relationship between ends and scarce means which have alternative use. This definition tells us that the focus of economics is not on telling people what should be, but instead focuses on trying to understand what is in situations where scarcity exists. Economics as a discipline can then only answer questions about what is and can use such answers to inform a discussion about what ought to be. Let's think about an example. We could use economics to answer questions about what would happen if the unemployment benefit was increased. But economic tools and methods do not tell us that what right thing to do to increase or decrease it. That instead relies on moral value judgments that need to be made by people. To consider what is, your upcoming training will involve building and analyzing economic models. Models have three different roles in economics: to describe, to explain, and to predict. A model describes when it asks what are some economic phenomena and how do they appear to relate to each other. A model explains when it asks what are the relevant ways economic constructs fit together and the true effect a change in one has on others. And finally, a model predicts when it uses counterfactual thinking to ask what will happen if something changes that hasn't been observed, for example, the future value of a stock or of average income. A model is not just a theoretical construct where we do some math. Neither is it just a set of data that provides us the truth. It is the ways we construct logical ways of thinking that are informed and disciplined by observed data. Within this regard, the quote by John Maynard Keynes on what makes an economist makes a lot of sense.
The master economist must possess a rare combination of gifts. They must be mathematician, historian, statesman, philosopher in some degree. They must understand symbols and speak in words. They must contemplate the particular in terms of the general and touch abstract and concrete in the same flight of thought. They must study the present in the light of the past for the purposes of the future. No part of a person's nature or their institutions must be entirely outside their regard. They must be purposeful and disinterested in a simultaneous mood, as aloof and incorruptible as an artist, yet sometimes as near to the earth as a politician.
There is no one model to rule them all, and there will be models that are more or less informed by different attributes of the economist discussed above. Humility is necessary. We need to recognize that an economic model is a way of describing, explaining, or predicting a tendency or result of a policy, and it is only by combining many models that are disciplined by both logic and data that we can truly build knowledge to inform a decision.
Economics isn't just about pushing the frontiers of knowledge regarding the allocation of scarce resources. It is a language that can be used to communicate that knowledge and persuade others. This is where my sales pitch for economics will become a bit different from the standard university open day, so buckle up. One of Keynes's students, Joan Robinson, describes this well in the following quote. The purpose of studying economics is not to acquire a set of ready-made answers to economic questions. but to learn how to avoid being deceived by economists. What I want to generalize here is that it's not just us trained economists you should be wary of, nor is it people who self-identify as economists, but any individual who claims to hold some truth about the nature of the human condition and tries to persuade you. Let's give an example. After a late night of work at the local grocery store before Christmas, you go to purchase some sleepy time tea to help you get some sleep. However, a box of 10 has jumped in price from $4 to $7.50. This sucks. You buy it, but you aren't happy about it, and you figure you'll have to buy something a bit cheaper for lunch the next day. In this mood, you get home and you make the mistake of turning on Twitter. You see people talking about tea prices. One person is bemoaning the greed of tea companies. Someone else, the high rate of inflation and the cost of tea. A third person had a nice graph showing tea and oil prices moving in unison. Further down, you get into the typical unhinged descriptions placing a racial motive front of center for why tea prices are changing, something you would expect to see from your grandparents on Facebook. However, the thing that catches your eye is a sharply dressed young finance guy with slicked back hair, showing technical charts of the tea market. He explains that the Federal Reserve is the reason why tea prices are rising. You now have your villain, and in the future when it comes time to vote or to buy Bitcoin, you have an idea that anyone who talks negatively about the Federal Reserve while asking for your vote or asking for your purchase will be in your favor. The issue is that the smooth-talking guy is either a charlatan or a complete idiot. You aren't an idiot for buying into his drivel, you just accepted his authority on an issue because you haven't really thought about it and the graphs looked primo. In truth, it makes no sense to blame a central bank for the price of tea, no matter how much some people who are online far too much believe central banks are to blame for everything. Words such as technical, supply, demand, inflation and money supply have specific technical meanings in economics that can vary from their looser general meaning. And hence, economic discussions of topics can get bent and contorted by those whose motive is solely to persuade others to further their own careers. The majority of economic commentators you see end up doing this in some way, not always on purpose, but with the same outcome of saying meaningless dross to sell a false narrative and sometimes providing harmful conclusions. To think about this, let's consider a broader purpose for an economic model: understanding, controlling, and communicating. Understanding involves asking, how do I understand an economic phenomenon and what might happen? Control involves asking, if a policy or institution has changed, how does that influence outcomes? Communicating involves asking, how can I communicate what I expect will happen or why my policy choice is the right one? One of the big problems is that people will use these models in a way that isn't consistent. They'll take a model that's meant to merely communicate ideas and act as if it performs other functions. And thereby they might take a relationship that makes sense in one circumstance, such as a relationship between rising general prices and the price of tea. You would expect both to go up together if the price of everything is rising. And they'll use that to comment on causes, consequences, and policies associated with what has happened. In this example, the price of tea itself is the only thing that has gone up, so it's been a change in its relative price. Mixing these types of models leads to results that sound compelling and evidence-based, but are incoherent, misleading, and will lead to bad choices and policies. Because the change in tea prices is something specific with what's happening with the tea market, turning around and trying to look at what's going on with the Federal Reserve is missing the point. In a world where it's difficult to tell the difference between models of persuasion and true evidence without training, there are real risks. If you believe that economic thinking is common sense, you are and will be manipulated to believe what others want you to believe. If you take at face value what politicians and media personalities tell you, or instead think you're being clever by swallowing whole what a variety of contrarian thinkers preach, then you are being manipulated. Learning the language of economics allows you to cut through the incoherent drivel that makes up public discussion of economic and social issues. It allows you to understand the limitations of arguments and make good choices about the sort of additional information you would want to collect in order to evaluate what people are telling you. The purpose of studying economics is not an appeal to authority by economists. It's not saying that the views of economists are right. In fact, after your studies, you'll be armed with all you need to reasonably tell me I'm an idiot when our values on a topic differ, or when I've made a mistake in how I've put together my explanation. Instead, the purpose of studying economics is to cut through the sea of arbitrary appeals to authority by the range of half-baked commentators that exist in our modern world. Learn what is good and bad information and make an informed view for yourself on trade-offs. This is necessary when deciding what you believe is right or wrong, and hence what party you will vote for, or what community group you will support. You want to make sure you have the right information before applying your own personal moral judgments. Not the arbitrary judgments of some idiot on Twitter who managed to yell more loudly than others, or some narcissistic op-ed writer who believes their experiences decorating houses makes them a modern-day Aristotle. I want you to see economics and studying economics as a way to not agree with me and other economists, but a way to be armed to robustly disagree with us when we are wrong and be able to look through the factory farm of fake economics produced in our society.